say no and we'll listen to that. We've always said respecting confidentiality, but now we've got a slightly different take on that, which I'll talk about in a moment. And we're coming from a place of, I guess, caring, not competitiveness. We're coming from what is now called the caring life force, which what used to be called rejectiveness.
Oh, I like that better.
Pardon?
I like caring life force better than.
Yeah, I stayed, the other words were David Pellin's words, and I stayed with that loyalty for years and years, until someone saw the David Pellin film and really didn't like him. And somehow or other, that motivated me to say, okay, I'm going to make this stuff crystal clear. So I came up with the terms caring life force, performance life force, and material life force. And thanks for that, Cease. So yeah, our credo is we're coming from that place. And of course, it's always been safety first. And when we first started the first two of these sessions, I'd sort of said they will not be recorded because that makes it safer. That people don't want whatever they say being able to be viewed by other people. And then, to be quite frank, I thought it through. And, in terms of the helping professions, those are on the physical side of the helping professions, nurses and doctors, out there with their lives at risk. And those of us who are counselors, psychotherapists, social workers, we're almost completely protected in the main. I made the decision that these will be recorded if in these tragic times it is useful, someone gets some benefit out of seeing this. I don't want us to cut that off because we have to protect our perhaps overly protected professions. So that is completely different for me. I'm sort of aware in terms of my, the way I follow politics and social issues, the dangers that are inherent in social media.
Peter, I just need to cut in because, Cease, we need you to mute yourself. There's a little bit of interference coming from you.
It's my computer that makes that noise. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they're going to be recorded and they're going to be available. And those of us who are taking part in it realize that. And, on the chance that this can be useful to someone, we are taking that risk and making that contribution. And to be quite frank, some people I'm close to who are more aligned with professional norms, if I can be a bit careful how I say it, don't like it, but I think at Pelham we should be able to make their contribution. So that's the background of it being recorded. Is there any questions about that?
If you have a question, just unmute yourself.
And wave your hand.
Yeah.
Right, so what I want to present today, I guess, is the part, this is the part of my work that is most well known, the pendulum. And it's been around for a long time. And it's been tried and tested, honed down, used in a lot of different situations. And what I wanted, so I want to make a brief presentation on it here. At the same time, my ambition for these forums and for other parts of my material that I want to roll out is that this can provide a lift for people. I've come up with a thing literally over the last couple of weeks, a terminology that I'm calling Pelin lift. And what the Pelin lift is, this can, in these times, which are different than any of us have ever lived through before. Yeah, just let me say that, different, because I want to try and be brief. And that the Pelin material taken on can give someone a lift of hope, energy, and creativity, that these tools can provide that. These days, I routinely use the phrase Pelin tools. One of the Pelin tools is what I'm presenting today, the pendulum. Just to touch on it briefly, the first session I presented contribution from hurt. And the claim is that that is, to some extent, particularly relevant in these times. If someone can take something out of which they are experiencing loss or fear and make a contribution to somebody else from those negative emotions, that, in my view, is the most healing force there is in the world. Part of the credo, which I didn't mention, and when we've got this nice, neat card, we'll have it all laid out. But as some of you know, a basic assumption of all our work is what at times I like to call David Pellin's piece of chalk, because he would draw on a blackboard a line from here to there and say, that's the whole truth. And then rhetorically, he'd hold up his piece of chalk and say, who can tell me the whole truth about this piece of chalk? And then he'd take his piece of chalk and draw a little line on his larger line and say, that's all the truth we can have, any of us individually. I've always, some of you know, been very attracted to that. So when I say contribution from hurt is the most healing force there is in the world, a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, my take on it. And if I can bring down the rhetoric a little bit, it is a very powerful healing force. The next session was on purpose, and material on purpose. The next two were sort of tough and more dense on attraction to hurt and callousing, which we are attracted to hurtful situations. We can get enthralled in the news about the coronavirus tragedy. Callousing is the way we cover up, the way we're hurting ourselves, hurting other people, or letting other people hurt us, and we become desensitized to it. I think something happens about the way we say coronavirus. And that's why I say coronavirus tragedy, because it almost becomes journalistic or institutionalized, and we're not quite taking in these are individual people who've lost their lives. This is about death. This is about tragic loss. It's not just coronavirus. So they were and then the last week was evaluating in terms of hurt and purpose, which is our bottom line. So if we're making an assessment, making a decision, setting a goal, how much hurt's involved in this on the one hand, and on the other hand, how does it fit my purpose? Just want to bring people up to date and provide a revision after many years, which I love. Usually we start with a pendulum. I didn't start with a pendulum in this series. We almost always start with a pendulum. We always start with the calm of the pendulum these days. Well, these days I've been mainly training foster carers in England, doing some work with the opioid crisis in different parts of America. And we start there with the calm of the pendulum. And so here I want to present it from the point, the pendulum is a way we can understand our emotions, and they are also a way we can control our emotions. And I'll just go through it quickly. There's got a flip side. In terms of, just to fill you in a bit, in terms of where the material's going, and in different ways we can get these to you. But both Cease and Ken at different times have run the Pendulum North American office over decades. So we've got to get supplies of these through Mary out to people, okay? But as well as this, which I call these learning cards, Pendulum learning cards. As well as this card on the pendulum, we've also got this one.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Which is for kids. So the same material that we're taking to highly qualified professionals in that learning card, we can also take to kids in that learning card. And that's a lot of our work over recent months. Okay, the pendulum. We say that our emotions swing like a pendulum. One way to understand it, it's like mood swings. And the high side of the pendulum is where our emotions want to reach out into the world. They want to engage. The tool is quite simple in some ways to understand with one rider. And that is the important bit to get is not about high or low energy. It's about the direction of our emotions. That's the only bit that's hard to grab. So the high is when our emotions want to reach out into the world. The low is when our emotions want to go inside us. In a quick, rough sketch, the high is extrovert, the high is physical, the low is introvert and mental. The middle of the pendulum we call the calm. At times it's what we label as our true self. And the middle of the pendulum is the place where we can best listen, best communicate, in most situations make the most accurate decisions, and be able to hold at the same time positive and negative, hold at the same time hope and despair. That's the calm of the pendulum. Very powerful place. The high side of the pendulum is, as I said, when our emotions want to reach out. You talk about a compulsive high. That's a sort of extreme bit here. We will find a way to get these cards to you. And the compulsive high, the extreme high swing, is where we are enthralled by our emotions to the point where they can control us, and where we think that reality is that which lies inside our own emotions. And I didn't realize I still had my baseball cap on. The high side can be positive or negative. It could be enthusiasm, falling in love, anger, embarrassment. The low side also can be positive or negative. That is a little more complicated. With, there's a pretty clear difference between being in love and being very angry at somebody. There's sort of clear differences. On the low side, what we call the pleasant low is self-pity. An extreme pleasant low is self-pity, martyrdom, sort of enjoy our despair.
Excuse me, Peter. We just need to give Shelley time to mute herself. And if you just want to tell her the tool you're teaching so she knows where we're at.
So sorry. I'm using my iPad and I don't know where the mute is on the iPad.
I don't know. I found it.
We'll manage.
Yeah, it's on top, the mute.
On top, yeah. Probably at the top, right?
Oh, okay. Got it.
You'll see it.
I should try and shut up a bit anyway soon. The high side of the pendulum can be pleasant or unpleasant. The low side of the pendulum can be pleasant or unpleasant. If we get extremely high, we will get extremely low. Okay. We are saying that is almost an inevitability. So and that's got particular ramifications, because one of the things we are saying in the psychotherapeutic field is depression might well be caused by people's personal issues that they're struggling with. At this time in human history, they might well be caused by a reaction to the coronavirus tragedy. But we're saying depression might be caused, and in fact will be caused a whole bunch of the time, by pendulum swings. So someone is depressed because they have a habit of getting very high, and it's not about the content. So in this circumstance, it's not about the coronavirus. You're saying your depression is about the coronavirus. We're saying maybe your depression is about your pendulum swing. It's a simple tool, and it's worth a lifelong study. I'm probably repeating this particularly as new people come in, but I like to ask people, Google Michelangelo's tools. Just Google that, okay, on your phone. And they come up. This was not true a long time ago. You can look at them. You can look at Michelangelo's tools. And then I ask people, Google particularly today, Google Pietà St. Peter's. You don't even have to put Michelangelo in, just Google Pietà St. Peter's. So he produced that with those simple tools. And these days I use that over and over again to validate that you can do extraordinary things with simple tools. I guess as these go on, we'll be looking at the pendulum more and more because it's our best known tool. I don't know if it's our best tool, it might be.
Can I say something
Yeah.
that's about, I just want to pick up a point you said and clarify it, I hope, that you said if people are depressed, it can be because they've been extremely high. And the image that comes with that is like the traditional thing I suffered from, where I was incredibly high and then I was incredibly low. In an excited, happy sense, I was high. But one of the things I've noticed over the years is that I think we used to call it hidden highs, that anxiety feels as though it's in the depression because you're thinking all the negative things, but it's quite physical, I think. I think anxiety is often a high like that. I'm so anxious about everything. And I suspect that helps take people down into the more sluggish part of what it feels continuous. You feel like you're depressed, but inside it, you're having these agitated, anxious times. That's what I experience anyway.
No, that's true. Well, it's a tool. And, there are no answers in. There's no answers in the pendulum. There's no answers. There's no masterpiece in Michelangelo's tools, which, as I said last week, you probably couldn't even buy them at Home Depot because they're crude. They're nothing. They're unacceptable, guys. So it is what someone does with a tool. So it's what someone does with the pendulum. So to take your example, Mary, just say someone because a high is not what appears to be the case. A high is what's actually going on inside us, okay? There are hidden highs, and anxiety and panic attack are often hidden highs. And those two particular things, and using the pendulum to apply to those two particular things, the high of panic attacks and the high of anxiety, because it is so often hidden, it gets more intense. So in terms of the pendulum, it's going up even more because it's hidden. And then that can lead to totally, because that high is held up there for so long, become debilitating, dangerous, realistically suicidal. So I'd like to throw it open to questions and comments.
So if people want to say something, just unmute yourself and then mute yourself again when you finish, just to cut down the background noise. Just as a point of information, we probably need to find somebody else, or if you can. Do other people have the record button, or is it only the host? Just because my internet connection is freezing a bit today, so the recording will be a bit uneven. But anyway, sorry, do that later. Worry about that afterwards. So if anyone has a question, that's great. If you don't, maybe you could come in with an example of a pendulum swing up or down or being in the calm that you experience, just to give some richness to the mix of what we experience with our individual pendulums. But questions are really welcome from anyone who's new to this or fairly new to this.
Yeah, I have a question, and this is the calm place, because I know people have different, I mean, I know I have a different energy level than like my aunt does and something else. In fact, that's one thing I'm dealing with right now, is having so many people around. I'm used to a very quiet day.
Can I just come in?
Yeah. Yes, that was, sorry, I went further.
No, if we could just do that thing which I really like, and in a minute we'll do a round about it. When you come in, you could just say where you are physically, geographically.
You've muted yourself.
Yeah, hold on. I was trying to unmute myself because
Okay.
I have a couple screens and it's kidding. Yes, I'm from the Chicago. I'm from south of Chicago in the United States.
Okay.
Well, actually, I grew up in Chicago, but I'm now living south of Chicago. Anyways, I wanted to know, in the calm place, is that like sort of an objective calm, or does each person have their own sort of natural ability? Because I know I feel like I have a much lower energy level than a lot of people around just naturally, because then I'm dealing, and I'm very introverted naturally, I think. So anyways, I guess that was my question.
Yeah, well, that's again, and you know, I'll be pushing this a little bit boringly at times. That's where it's a tool, okay? So, in a way, the calm is a wonderful place for all of us, and picked up in, and it's, you know, been around forever, from the Buddha to now mindfulness, okay? That's what the calm is. But in a very real way, the calm is how we find it and what it is for us, okay? So we really push the individuality. The calm is such a powerful place that when someone finds a way to get into it for themselves, they think, well, the whole world would be a better place if, you know, we meditated or prayed or went swimming or whatever. But it ain't like that. You know, the enormous individual difference. So it's almost, I think this is my calm, and then checking out what are the dimensions of that for me. Yeah. Because, I mean, I grew up in Australia. I grew up in a famous Sydney beach, or Manly Beach, the second one after Bondi, which is the famous one. And, you know, I can even dive in the swimming pool and just feel good. You know, I can get into a calm by going swimming. And often, not always, but often the ways we get into a calm have references back to our childhood. What we call now memory links. We used to call them referrals, and I substituted memory links because it's simpler. So I guess it's sort of understanding it and then having it as a goal and then experimenting with it. I think a lot of my work is really about trying things and experimenting, and something like, I haven't quite got enough technology around yet, but I sort of want to have Sam I am so I can and that's the place, certainly in these forums, that I want to come from. The lift we can find in the calm for any of us will be extraordinary. And of course, that's, on the one hand, there's Sam I am, and then on the other hand, there are the great spiritual leaders who taught how to achieve what we call the calm.
So can I add something to what Cynthia said? So what I heard you saying, Cynthia, was that you experienced yourself as having like a less, I think you said low energy, a less kind of energetic level of activity than, say, your aunt. And I don't know if you remember this bit, because it's really hard to get this because the common usage of high energy and low energy is so kind of imprinted on us. So it's good right from the beginning to get the idea high means that my feelings may not actually go out, but they want to go out. You know, I want to be angry, I want to cry, I want to shout, I want to dance, I want to sing. That's high, right? Or I want to cry my eyes out. That can be a high, not a low. And then I just want to have my thoughts. And they're often dark in that low. So it's the direct, if you can get that thing that it's about the direction the feelings want to go, then you'll be closer to how the tools. What's that?
Here I did.
Oh.
Mary, your screen is frozen.
Oh, yes. I'll wait till it unfreezes. It doesn't normally freeze as much as this.
Oh.
It's having a bad time. Where did I get cut off? Anyway, did you see some of the hands thing to try and help emphasize that? Okay. Gail, I don't know if you could.
Please.
Oh,
Gail, if you can mute yourself because there's sometimes noise coming from you, darling. Thanks.
Oh,
sorry,
there
Steve.
is? Okay. We could do that.
Thank you. Sorry,
So-
Cease, go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. So what I was thinking while you were talking, Peter, if we're working with people, let's say in a group, rather than the standard thing of, you know, picture yourself, I don't know, but sometimes people just give a standard scene to look at, but it sounds like maybe what you're suggesting would be to help the people remember times when they felt very calm, maybe when they were very young, and think about that and put themselves in that, back in that scene, and feel what that was like. Would that?
Yes. It's. I mean, practically and clinically, it's trying to come from the person.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go, just to touch on it, there are two major elements, major influences on my work, amongst others. One was David Pellin, who on my Facebook I write about endlessly. And the other one is Gestalt therapy and Fritz Perls. So it's coming from the person in terms of touching on Fritz without interpretation, without putting our formulas on them. Not is, I mean, I do, it's a bit complicated. It's not sort of, let me teach you the calm and this is what it should be for you, that it's almost laying out the tool, and that's what I like to call the tool, and saying, you know, what's that like for you? You know, where do you think you may lie in that? And if someone can get in there, and one of the things that our material provides, it often provides a theoretical structure around common sense, or a theoretical structure around something somebody already knows about themselves. So you're getting someone talking about what their calm might be like. And then you're sort of fitting in the cognitive material around them rather than imposing the cognitive material on them. I'm not saying we always achieve that, but there's a certain methodology in there.
And it's more respectful of the person and their own experiences by doing it that way.
Yeah, and also on my side, it's just to share with you briefly, indulge myself a bit. You know, my sort of political and social values, the power and wisdom that's in the non-professional academic class. That's been a theme of mine all the way along. And I have a way these days of talking about a lot of Pelham is based on the unconscious accumulation of human intuitive wisdom over time. And people sort of tend to nod their head. But if you say it's based on common sense, which all that pretentious statement was a description of common sense, you know, it can get dismissed, and particularly with our use of simple words, it can get dismissed. So that's why I bring in Michelangelo, right? You know, simple tools can do great things. But bringing it back, and within all of that, you know, is respect to the individual. And I guess that's particularly touching and worrying. Even here in England, you know, the way it's going down, there's not the political rancor you've got. But even here, it's sort of numbers rather than that was a person who died yesterday amongst another 784 people who died somewhere yesterday. And I think just what the individual means, I mean, there almost needs to be some discussion and calm discussion in the middle of the pendulum about, you know, what does one individual death mean? There's something funny about we're surviving by looking at all these numbers. And I'm not even critical of that. I'm just saying there's something missing. The empathy and the compassion. And even here, when we're doing a bit better, with the public statements, it's still got that odd quality. And that is just to refer back to the material 2 sessions ago. That's attraction to hurt. There's an attraction to hurt and callousing about sort of focusing on the numbers. I wonder if there's something within that attraction to hurt that's like, well, maybe I can work out my odds, okay, by looking at the numbers. I don't know what it is. It's worth discussing from our point of view.
I'd like to say that I find I can tolerate looking at the numbers, which I don't do that much, but I check what's happening here where I am geographically, which is Rosarito Beach, Mexico, for those people who went at the beginning of the call. But I can't cope with the individual stories. I get overwhelmed by the attraction to her of really feeling the devastation of the deaths and the financial losses and the, you know, more or less hopefully temporary collapse of the system. If I let that in too much, then it's a really bad attraction to her pendulum swing. And I've been deliberately distancing myself as a survival tool, partly by not reading very much about it, not watching. I mean, I guess that's one of the tools things, right? You have to find your balance in an unknown never before experienced crisis like this in our lifetimes. It's like, how do you stay compassionate without being overwhelmed and just making yourself dysfunctional?
Well, that's where the calm of the pendulum will absolutely pay off. And just to refer back to this material, that's also where purpose will pay off. If you can combine the calm of the pendulum and purpose, you can handle reading the numbers. Because I'm a student of history, and sort of informally, find any really good book on the Second World War. Read a chapter. If you're in the calm of the pendulum, then this whole thing goes into a different perspective. Because the numbers in the Second World War were, unspeakable. 60 million people died. And the horror, the sadism, whatever you call it, it's a very odd thing to say, but just from that perspective, and maybe I'll add to the homework, two chapters of any really good book on the Second World War, read from the calm of the pendulum, and provides a different perspective on that. Anyway, Ken, your sorry, Gail, and then Ken. You got to press mute. Yeah.
Remember the unmuting was at the top.
Got
there
it.
you go.
Yeah. You got to
Okay.
say where you are. I'm, by
Yeah.
the way, in Kings Lynn, Norfolk, England.
I'm in LA.
Could I maybe barge in next, because I'm going to have to sign off in a couple of minutes, because
Please
Okay.
believe it or
do.
not, I have another Zoom call coming at 2.
Please,
Okay.
please do. Please
Okay.
do.
Thanks. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I don't know particularly what I want to say, except it's been an interesting experience since, I learned the pendulum, 35 years ago, or whatever number of decades.
More than that.
A single-digit number of decades
Yeah.
ago, and haven't had much contact or involvement with it, in the last couple decades. And it's just interesting to watch myself, to sense myself sitting here and hearing this again in light of all the things I've learned, and a spiritual school that I've been a part of for 20 years, and the teachings from there. And I notice at one level, my head is playing what Fritz used to call fitting games, like, oh, here's the pendulum, and here's the concepts from the diamond approach, and how do they fit together? How are they the same? How are they different? And then the level of like, well, okay, which one of these is right? If they don't agree, which one of them is right? And that's sort of getting in that way. And then there's just at the next level inward, I guess, there's just watching all these different experiences of mine just knock around against each other and merge and combine and facilitate each other and collide. And then there's sort of the heart level, where I'm just loving having this connection with you again, Peter. It's been quite a few years since we've been physically in the same place, and just feeling the connection and how we're all wrestling with the recent stuff that's going on. And I've been wrestling a lot with, before this, with the whole climate crisis. And in fact, the Zoom call at 2:00 is going to be about that. And So, you know, I could go into a few specific things about the pendulum, and well, I guess I'll say one thing, okay? And a thing that's been up for me recently that connected with Peter's talk when you were saying the bit about you go from the high and being all caught up in the high to swinging over to the low and being all caught up in that, even or pausing or even noticing of the calm along the way. And that made me realize that that merges with something that I've been very aware of lately, just in terms of being caught up in, well, you can call it your emotions or your object relations or your, you know, psychological patterns or your belief systems or your whatever, where that's the only thing that's important. I've been calling them micro worlds lately. Like I'm in this micro world where all that matters is to stop Trump from getting reelected, right? And everything is, all the iron filings line up along that magnet, right? And everything is filtered and sorted and reacted to in terms of that. And then, and I guess that tends to be a high, it could be a low one, I don't know, but it's being all caught up as opposed to simply being present with what's going on, including the fact that I'm kind of caught up in this, right? And so it's like, that to me is my current experiencing of the calm, is when, you know, what's going on is what's going on, and I feel all the passions and I see them reacting, you know, I see myself reacting in various old ways or various new ways, and I simply am observing it. And yet I'm experiencing it too. I mean, experiencing it very directly, you know, which is, I think, one of the geniuses of the Gestalt thing, is that you're both experiencing it intensely and you are being aware of it and not having to act on it.
Yeah.
So that's to me is my current experience of being in the calm. So I just want to throw that in.
I just want to add one thing to that, because the calm, there's a lot of energy in the calm.
Mm-hmm.
The calm is not passive the way we define it, okay? And in that sense, it's not mindfulness, it's different. The two examples I use, sex and creativity. Long, slow lovemaking is not less sexual than a passionate affair with someone new. It's just different. Flashes of creativity that Van Gogh certainly had and wrote about in these long volumes of letters. The creativity, if you read Van Gogh's letters, his creativity happened in and around the calm. The vision can happen on the high, but in terms of what Ken's saying, and of course, and I'll say it again because I'm proud of it this year, that, you know, I was at Barack's first inaugural. You know, he is a real example of action in the calm of the pendulum. I mean, he really is. And it's in the cliche, isn't it? No drama, Obama. It's sort of there. So there can be a lot of, as there can be a lot of good sex in the calm of the pendulum, there can be a lot of good creativity in the calm of the pendulum, and there can be a lot of good politicking in the calm of the pendulum. And maybe that is a place where we have something to offer. Because, you know, maybe the rhetorical speeches, you know, maybe they might have run their course. You know, maybe we need the quietness of Gettysburg speeches in this day and age. And I'm surprised to say that, because, you know, I love the political rhetoric when they're on my side.
Yeah, it's a pleasant high.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I got to go. Thank you so
Ken,
much. Love you.
I love you very, very. I just want to say quickly before you go, Ken helped me open pill in Italy. Okay. So thank you. It's still going.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Great,
See
Ken.
you hopefully next week.
Great. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ken. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So over to you, Gail.
Okay. I wanted to just continue on the numbers game that we were talking about, that was brought up by a couple of people. Yeah, so I follow the numbers in New York every day because I watch the governor in the morning. He has a press conference, and his name is Cuomo. I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, long history of politics in that family, going back to Mario Cuomo being the governor. And he's Andrew. Anyway, the numbers are brutal, as I'm sure a lot of people know. New York City is so dense, so many people died. But I don't shy away from the numbers, and I was thinking about why that would be. And I thought probably because I was a bookkeeper, I'm kind of number oriented.
Okay.
Numbers are what I'm used to, so it's not a tangible thing. I'm not seeing bodies, but I also want to parallel that with when I worked at Rikers Island. Peter brought that up last week. There were so many inmates, when I would walk in the morning. I worked in the house of detention for men, and there were so many inmates behind bars. And, I was very naive then. I was young. I was in my 20s, my late 20s, and I lived in New York then, obviously. And that had a much deeper effect on me than these numbers that the governor puts out every morning, It's just a different way of looking at numbers, And the other thing that I noticed yesterday that I was doing is, and I will get to my point here, I was looking at the people that weren't, I can't think of the word right now, but anyway, they were being buried in anonymous coffins on an island in New York, and I forget what the name of that. I don't know really what I'm saying. I do know what I'm saying, but I can't think nobody came to get them. I can't think of what that is, but you guys know what I mean. And that really touched me deeply, more than the numbers in Rikers, more than the numbers on the morning news, with Cuomo. But seeing those coffins lined up, and instead of looking away, I just, that's something that really touched me. I felt that hurt. And I was thinking about the kind of person that I am. And when Peter was talking about the pendulum, and I am, I don't know if that would be an attraction to the hurt. I don't know, but I've always been, the kind of person that pain is, pain, when I'm in pain, that's when I make changes in my life. Not that I could do anything about what's going on in New York, of course, or anything that's happening right now, but I'm deeply affected by it. And it's not really a bad thing to be,
Yes.
I'm not way up there, I'm not way down here. I'm very cautious to not go to the low because I had a grandmother who committed suicide. So I'm very careful that I kind of keep myself in the calm, So I don't know if any of that made any sense, but I do know that I wanted to say it because I think it really says a lot about who I am and how I deal with hurt in my life and things that I don't really have any control over. So I think the pendulum is a wonderful tool, for emotions. So anyway, that's all I have.
No, I really appreciate that. Just to comment on it briefly. Attraction to hurt can be a really positive thing, like being concerned about what's happening in the world. And I guess one of the things we can say, attraction to hurt, if we're in the calm, can be something from around which we can make a good contribution. And in this day and age, even having that awareness is a contribution. Cease.
Yeah, I wanted to say something related to that, because I do psychological evaluations or do meet with a lot of different people, and I was arranging an evaluation, since I couldn't do it at my office, to come to this person's house. And I realized as I was talking to the brother.
Oh, hold on a minute. Say where you are.
Oh, Tampa, Florida. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about setting up a place for me to meet with his brother, and he kind of offhand said, well, I've had a fever myself for about 5 days. And I'm like, what?
Hello.
And I realized as I talked to him, he had no understanding of the virus, nothing. And then I had another person, this was before they come in, and I was telling them to sit, 6 feet away because the virus. And again, I got a blank stare. And I was realizing how the poor, at least in our area, are uninformed about how to take care of themselves, what this is, how to take care of themselves. It was very crushing to me. Now, where the contribution training came in, though. So my husband and I have a habit of responding to the New York Times online, and there was an article that was somewhat related to this. But anyway, I used it as an entree to talk about this experience and how we, as a nation, have to make sure that people low socioeconomic, poor, maybe not connected, have information. It's a little bit different than knowing about the people, but it's understanding. And so I wrote about what had happened to me. And I actually got one. I don't know if you've ever done that. They give you a little seal if it's the letter of the day or something.
So you wrote a letter to the Times?
Yes.
Okay.
And
right.
so it gets almost it's on the online, it got published.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's motivated me to try to, it's been hard though, but I've been trying to get a hold of our mayor, I don't know what office, to find out how they're dealing with the poor on this issue, because that seems to be a huge, huge thing. There's people who are going to die. If this guy I was talking to,
I just missed say the last little bit again. I just missed a bit of it.
If these people don't know about it, or don't know how to protect themselves, or don't understand about it, they're just kind of sitting ducks right now. So I think that's where the contribution from hurt could come and play for me anyway on this. And so I can see how those two things fit together for me. So finding a way to make something of it. You're even inspiring me a little bit, Gail, to talk to our editor of the Tampa Bay Times about providing a little bit more information. So these people aren't all just a statistic. We don't have to know gory details, but to honor them. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
No, and again, I mean, just putting that into the pendulum, just say somebody, not you, was doing that from sort of on a big high, okay? The way you were speaking, there was almost at times a deliberateness in your words, and then the letter to the Times and maybe the local paper. You could feel the calm of the pendulum in there, okay? One way to see the pendulum, it increases the range of choices we have about what we want to do with our emotions. It's almost a great thing it provides. And you could feel that And if we just took somebody else who was sort of in high political anger about it all, that can almost have an attraction to hurt in it. But because it's way up on a high on the pendulum, it's not going to be very effective.
Can I, did you finish, Peter? I just wanted to comment about something because I think most of you know my history of taking a really long time to learn how to be more in the calm and tolerable area, having had very extreme swings. And I think I'm pretty good at being in, oh, sorry, that's my dog. Pretty good at being, well, having choices about my emotions, like you were just saying. And what I noticed after the virus happened and having a few days where I went into fear when it was very new and a shock, was that I really didn't have the control and choices over the depth and height of, I didn't go low, but I didn't have the control over sudden spurts up that I normally have nowadays. I was a bit more at the mercy of things like, you know, I'd feel all right in the house and then I have to go shopping. I chose to be the one that goes shopping because my friends are a bit more high risk than me. And I'm scared when I brush shoulders with somebody in the supermarket. So it's like a sudden, hi, you know, oh my God, I got close to that person, which really bothers me because I'm really a bit concerned if that stays after things are more normal again. But just that, for me, it was really obvious that I'd reached this place of my life at last where I was really kind of suddenly taken by surprise by my pendulum. That's a good way of putting it. And it's still happening. You know, I can have a run of a few days where, you know, things are good and I'm mostly can be around the calm. And then last night, my friend and I had a fight out of nowhere and we couldn't stop. And I started trying because I know the pendulum so well. I said, no, we have to try not to talk about this now. We have to pull back and then we can do it later. And it was like you could feel the way I was talking. I sounded patronizing because I was so full of pendulum high inside. But anyway, I don't want to get too detailed. It's just like what I wanted to say to lead up to was one of the ways to use the pendulum is say, okay, this is an extraordinary time, and I just noticed my pendulum's going a bit crazy. And then you can use that awareness to say, well, it is connected to the stress and strenuousness of the times and the new emotions, like a lot of fear you don't necessarily normally have. And so I need to think a lot about going closer to the middle of the pendulum. I need to think a lot about what purposeful thing can I do, so that you're using the tool of the pendulum to say, let me go back near the center. Let me find a way to be near the center. Let me find a way to pull down this high. And keeping the kind of common sense awareness that this is a very unusual, tumultuous time, and it's going to go weird again for me. It's going to go weird again. So anyway, I just wanted to say a bit about that because I think it's a good example of using the pendulum to try and maintain relative calm and sanity. I think I'll just add to that, which is like when you first learn the pendulum and you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it's easy to feel like, oh yeah, I get that. And it's like what Peter was saying about the sophisticated things Michelangelo could use. We'll have different ways in which, you know, like my father, for example, he would have benefited from having a few more highs because he was so near the middle. He was kind of shallow or appeared shallow. He probably wasn't really, but he appeared it. And
Just to
yeah,
touch on that in terms of a piece of teaching,
yeah.
And again, it's a tool. It's not saying extreme swings are bad and the calm is everything. It's not saying that at all. It's saying something more. It's a simple tool with much more subtlety and sophistication to that. People can miss out on life by spending too much time in the calm and never getting really high. So that's where it's quite a complicated tool. Life has, how can I put it? It's a tool, okay? We bring tools in when we need them. We don't carry a hammer and chisel around in our pocket. We don't carry a hammer around in our pocket because a picture might fall off a wall.
I was
might
thinking
get,
about that
go
last
on.
night. Well, I was thinking about what you just said last night, because sometimes my life feels like a straight line, which really means you're dead, But it's a nice calm. It's a calm that I can deal with, But it has its, well, it's a lonely calm right now, especially because I'm confined to my house. So yeah, it's very interesting what's going on right now. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking.
So what I was getting at was, I think it's really good to have a certain humility to these tools, because they're
A certain
humility.
Oh yeah,
That,
yeah.
Because I've seen this, this is 40 years of my life. I've seen people come in and go, oh yeah, I know that. And then they go away without really considering the tool, because it's something that their own common sense, they already knew. But each of them has this kind of depth of mining that, as Peter was saying, that you can draw on when you need it. Like I need right now, in the instability of this current situation and having little highs that I kind of stopped having in a good way for me. I need to say, okay, I need the pendulum because I'm a bit more easily triggered than I am usually now. And I can use the pendulum to say, what do I need? I need to do something quiet. I need to walk to the beach. I need to clear my head. And when you get that, with the repetition and with the learning or reading about the tools and talking about them, and kind of so they're inside you, rather than they're just like the diagram you've seen once and you think you understand it, then there's such a richness there. And I guess that's the end of the sentence.
See, you need to adjust your picture a little bit. That's better.
We lost you. So we've got a quarter of an hour of our assigned time left. Does anybody else want to say something specifically on the pendulum before we kind of consider how we want to bring this to a close? Shelley, did you have any questions or anything, as you're kind of new to the material?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting I think the basic concept of what the pendulum is, but I obviously missed the beginning of the talk today, so I feel like I'm just coming in on it, and maybe I'd catch up, try and understand it more. But it seems like it's like as a therapist, maybe helping somebody become aware of where they are in the pendulum.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
right?
Yeah, we've got these, is that the right way up? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got these training cards that we're going to find a way to get to you. And that's the one for adults, and that's the one for kids, because we're also teaching this material to kids. And also, Shelley, the pendulums all over the website, which is about to relaunch soon, within days. And we'll be referring it at other times in these sessions. Yeah, because just one of the things I do want to do is find ways to make this great. Okay, so we could email the diagrams. Okay, we'll find a way to do that. Yeah. So we'll be referring to it at other times, Shelley, as well. And as I said at the beginning, we always start Pell and groups and courses, mini or large, with the pendulum. To be absolutely frank, the reason I didn't want to do it here, and I wanted to start with contribution from hurt and purpose, I thought that gave us a cutting edge difference where the pendulum can be a bit sort of dismissed. Yes, I know that. What's new about that? And it does have bits of newness in it for sure. Because I was just thinking about if you know the statement I made, you can miss out on life if you spend all your time in the middle of the pendulum. Your life can be incredibly productive and you're aware of other people and you're a good person, all of that. But you can miss out on bits. And I think when it gets to be written, because when you think of the talent that is existing in this man right now, I'm talking about Barack Obama, he could have had might have worked for him to have some really big highs, to not always, but, you know, he said in defense of that, and it seems, I don't know that, but it seems it's, you know, totally just a cliche in African-American circles. You know, what does a black man do if he's the only black man in a group of white people? Walk slowly. So, you know, he's known how to do the calm, how to walk slowly, but, you know, his political talent, maybe he needed to bust out of it somewhere and do something different. I mean, in politics, not be always reasonable. Just a particular sort of use of the pendulum to try and get a different perspective on things. But it's not a formula like the extreme pendulum swings are bad and the middle of the pendulum is good. That's not it at all.
One thing you, yeah. Sorry, Peter. I was going to say one thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think all of us are influenced by the Seminole population we work with. And, you know, mine was mainly young men in prison serving serious crimes for which they should be serving long sentences. So I work with people in my sort of formative years. I work with people who their pendulum swings were sort of really bad, you know, really destructive. They needed the middle of the pendulum. Fritz Perl, the people he worked with, were mainly people who were very well established in. So he needed to help them get really high, you know, get into rage, get into anger, pound pillows. So I guess I just want to use that to sort of touch on how it's a tool, how we use it is infinitely varied.
What I was going to add was something you mentioned in passing that's important to what you just said, is that one of the things we teach about it is, are you hurting yourself or others with your pendulum?
Yeah.
And in my case, that was, I was hurting myself and others with
Yeah.
being over the top and a nuisance,
Yeah.
and then with terrible destructive depressions. My dad hurt me and my brother and others because he was so in the calm of the pendulum, we couldn't feel any love from him, even though he did love us, but we couldn't feel it because he'd only talk about the weather. And so it's, you know, how are you hurting yourself and others if you are? And those are two very different examples.
Yeah.
And I guess that's also where you might take the tool off the wall. You know, if you feel you're kind of happy with your choices around your emotions, you're spending time in the calm, you're taking a risk when you need to take a risk, then you don't really need the tool at that time. Maybe you never need the tool in your whole life, some people. But then if hurt starts coming in, it's a good thing to say, I wonder if that, if you know it, you can say, I wonder if the pendulum's anything to do with why things are going right now. Oh yeah, maybe it is in this way.
Yeah. Just before we stop, I want to just use a bit of time to make a couple of claims about the material, okay? Because the whole thing about the Pellan lift in these times and how these tools can help people with that is something I do want to get into and do want to find a way to roll out and ask people, you know, do you know anyone who'd like this material? Well, our gift to them in these very hard times. So I want to put these two claims in the context of my ambition about what I'm calling the Pellan lift. One is this. Those two together, okay? So my claim about the Pellan material is that which could be useful to a teenage 14-year-old foster girl could be of equal use to a Cambridge University professor, okay? And that's a big claim. Both could make the 14-year-old girl a Cambridge University professor. Both could make serious mistakes about relationships. And the pendulum can help people not make those mistakes. So, and we have over the years, I appreciate what you said, Cease, about liking caring life force, the words. You know, we've honed this material down. We can roll it out, you know, way that's understandable and simple. So that one thing, the one claim, I guess I'm calling these two claims, Mary. The second claim is that people can come into this material for as much and as little as they like. They don't have to sign up to something. Someone could come in and learn the pendulum and say, well, you know, I understand he talks a lot and has got a lot of other stuff, but this is the only bit I'm interested in. And that's fine by us. It's absolutely fine. You know, we're not saying, you know, you really won't get any meaning out of it unless you stick with it for 2 years. We're not saying that. We're saying something quite different. Someone might come in and just learn something about purpose and think, wow, you know, I can see that my Uncle Harry, I've always seen my Uncle Harry's have got something I don't have. And see that in terms of purpose, and then go on a search for purpose for themselves. So the universality of it, on the one hand, from a 14-year-old foster girl to a university professor, and the usefulness of it to them both, and being able to take as much or as little as you like, and that's useful. I guess they're two almost assumptions that I want to put in around repel and lift. Okay. And again, it does come back. I don't have the quotes here. And I wish I did. I'd look so slick and elegant. But on the one hand, I've got the quote from Green Eggs and Ham, okay? And I came across two quotes that are very similar to that. Try it. You know, this might work for you, try it. One was from Abraham Lincoln, the other one was from FDR. I've got these three quotes: Abraham Lincoln, FDR, Sam I Am. Fortunately, I don't have them
I can find them.
elegantly. You found them?
I will in a sec.
Yeah. So there's a certain experimental quality to it. And, you know, that might be someone who is new to it and just wants a bit, or someone who knew it years ago and just wants to revisit a bit of it. All of that's available.
So I've got them, Peter. If you repeat the green eggs and ham one, I'll come in with the other two.
Well, Green Eggs and Ham is really simple, isn't it? Try it. You will see. You might like them on a boat, on a train. You know, a lot of us have read those stories endlessly to small children. That's Green Eggs and Ham.
So Abraham Lincoln said, "As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew." And Franklin, what's his name? Roosevelt said, "The country demands bold, persistent experimentation. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something."
Yeah. And then I've got Green Eggs and Ham, okay? Yeah. Okay, well, we each just say something as we're letting go of this time. Yeah, whatever, something personal we want to say. And you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. I just want to try this. It might be a bit silly. And when we do that, we'll also say where we're located, because there's something about the spread of that I like. I'll go first. Yeah, I'm in Norfolk, England. And I just like this. Okay, this is the first time I've felt really sort of comfortable here. It doesn't feel super new to me, okay? And that's really nice.
And just go as you want.
This is Cease. You brought up something at the beginning that I'll be looking forward to more about, the line of the truth and you know, the little bits that we have. And that's really helpful right now, I think, with this situation, with many, many other situations, to keep that in mind. Because I can get at times very, well, I know the truth, you know, and I think maybe we all can, but anyway, that's very important to keep in mind. And I like the visual on that.
Hi, hi, I'm Sally. I'm in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles. And I was touched by the conversation you guys were having about the hearing numbers and how strange this all is, you know. I had a client tell me she's working from home. She lives completely alone, and she listens to the news nonstop. She leaves it on all day long. And I gently said to her, I wonder if that's too much. I wonder how it would be. What did you do at work? And she said, oh, I usually use my earphones and listen to music. I said, how would that be?
Wow.
Yeah. You could watch an hour of the news. You could keep it on for a little bit, but maybe listen to music while you work. And she liked that idea. So I feel it too, though. When I see the numbers, they flash on my phone and I go, oh my God. And then I just withdraw, I notice. I kind of go into some denial. I just can't cope with it. So I definitely notice how that is affecting me and other people. And, just trying to do the best I can. I don't know if I should know more, like know
Yeah,
more
yeah.
people. I don't know.
Cynthia?
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I'm from the Chicago area and living about 40 minutes south of Chicago in the United States. This is really helpful. I mean, the material is actually not new. Mary has been teaching me about the pendulum for years now to help with some of my own personal issues. But there was a couple things I thought of and that just sort of flashed through. One of them, I don't really try not to get too involved in the political situation in the United States, but one of the things that was occurring to me in this, that I've been trying to find words for what I've seen, and actually this, like, the whole country has been on a political high and been used, but that's and the other thing, I was just thinking about adjusting because there's to other people around, and trying to learn right now how to, because I'm used to working at home all day with my spouse being at work, and now and more people are around, and I'm having meetings, and I'm having to get my balance in order to be able to function, because if I have too much going on around me, I've always been like, if there's too much, I can't think. So learning to find my calm again to be able to get my own work done in this. And one more thing I thought of, and I'm just offering, I'm probably, I'm if anybody needs some help to figure out the technology in terms of getting those cards into PDFs or into things to send to everybody, I'm offering myself to help with that.
Oh, thank you. We'll take
needed.
that up.
Okay.
So maybe I'll go next. I'm Mary. I'm in Rosarito Beach, Mexico. Very, very grateful that I really like living on my own with people on my property, but not in my apartment. Well, it's okay, Peter. And but right now, I'm very grateful to be in a household of 3 people and not be on my own. And what do I want to say about it? I'm just really loving how communal and connected it feels, and it's lovely when some of the same faces come back, but it doesn't, I feel very open, like, to bigger numbers, smaller numbers, the same people, different people. I'm just loving the sameness and differentness of this experience each time we do it. So like having Ken and having Cease come today was like really special. And I've seen you guys before, but it's just really lovely, really lovely. That's me.
Gail, you got to press the...
All the time. It's too hard for me to remember. Okay. This was great. I've heard about the pendulum when I was in Italy, and also in Topanga. Mary was giving me a little rundown of the pendulum before I went to Italy. And I don't think it really had any meaning until today. And maybe, I don't know I understood the words, but I didn't relate them to myself. And today I was able to, really relate them to everything I heard today, I was able to relate to me. So that really makes me feel good, because I don't always relate to people or things that people are talking about or any of that stuff. So yeah, today was really great. And I look forward to our next meeting. Thank you, Peter. And
Okay,
Mary.
thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Okie doke. Thank you all very much. And we'll be back here on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
Cynthia, thank you. We will take you up on that, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So feel
Okay,
free to
bye-bye.
unmute yourself just to say goodbye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Everybody, it was good to see everybody again.
Just hold on to the
Bye-bye.
email, because it'll be the same sign
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, same
Okay.
same link, same. Gail, it's a good point, because in the future it might change. There's some muddle between me having bought the profession. Am I frozen again? Or
No, you're
some
not.
No, you're
muddle
fine.
about my having bought the professional package, and each time it's hard for me to get in to start the meeting. So I have to sort something out with Zoom. So it's just possible the link will change, but I'm trying to make it so it is the same right through. But if it
Okay.
changes, then
Okay.
it'll be the same right through.
Okay.
All right.
But I'll let you know.
Bye-bye.
I'll let you know.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 I'm going to get off now.
I'm now going to end the meeting for you.
Oh, okay, good.